Well, if you are here watching this video, you most likely have already seen my video on Mega Man 2, a game that I stated was the best Mega Man game. But, of course, in order to have gotten Mega Man 2, we needed to receive Mega Man 1. After releasing the Why is Mega Man 2 So Goddamn Good video, I went back to the original series and took the time to play the first 6 games in the series all over again. I'm currently in the process of playing through Mega Man 8 for the first time, and I'm looking to replay Mega Man 9 and 10, then we'll cap it off with the recently released 11. Just to set the record straight and to create more intrigue around the videos coming up relating to the series, I want to state my rankings for the series so far. Considering I haven't finished 8 or 11, these will not be in the rankings as of yet. The rankings, though, will get updated with each video should I change my opinions, so stay tuned for that. My current ranking for the series goes Mega Man 1, 7, 10, 5, 6, 3, 4, 9, and then 2. I want to stress right now that I love all these games, yes, even with Mega Man 1 coming in dead last. I would still give this game a 7 out of 10, and the rest of the series keeps moving up in ranking, with 4 being the first 10 out of 10 for me personally. But this ranking does beg the question, why in God's name would I ever put Mega Man 1 at dead last, especially in a video where I claim it's so important? Well, to answer that question, let's take a look into why I feel that Mega Man 1 is still a damn important game despite its flaws. The year is 1987, and you have been tasked with creating the very first original console video game released by Capcom specifically for a video game console. Capcom had released previous games for the Ninendo Entertainment System with games such as 1943, The Battle of Midway, Commando, and Ghosts and Goblins. The difference with these, though, is that they were ports of previous arcade games, whereas Mega Man was the first one made specifically for the NES only. Mega Man, or as the Japanese knew him, Rockman, would become one of the most prominent characters in the Capcom lineup, even though he hasn't seen the same level of commercial success that the games like the Resident Evil or Street Fighter games have. Regardless, Mega Man was put into development, but what many people do not know were some of the alternative names for the titular character. Obviously, I just stated Rockman, but that was a release name as well. Some of the names that were considered for the character are actually a bit more interesting than you may initially think. The other names that almost became the name of the main character for the franchise were Mighty Kid, Knuckle Kid, and Rainbow Kid. I could not explain to you the reasoning for Knuckle Kid being an option, but Mighty Kid is pretty self-explanatory. However, Rainbow Kid? I mean, the only reason for this is simple, and it's just simply due to the changing colors of the character as he uses other weapons in the game. But thankfully, none of these were chosen, as the team decided that Mega Man was a much more definitive and cutting-edge name for the Blue Bomber. Once a name had gotten figured out, the character had to be brought to sprite format to support the NES's capabilities. The same goes for the Robot Masters that you see in the game, which we will get into exploring those later. This was proven to be a difficult task for Keiji Inafune, who would be the one responsible for creating the character designs, the sprite forms of the characters, the box art, and the illustrated instruction manual as well. According to him, it was just him and 5 other individuals working on the game, and they were determined to make this game the best it could be and be perfect in every aspect. Whether they succeeded at this is left up to gamer interpretation, but the effort and passion was there from the beginning. All of this effort led into the creation of the lore surrounding the game, with a plot that goes as such. In the year of 20XX, yeah, I know, Dr. Light is a scientist who is tasked with the creation of robots set up for tasks in the real world. Whether it be for cutting, mining, burning, Dr. Light was determined to make useful robots for the world. One day, the robots begin to attack the populace and become what we know as the Robot Masters. These Robot Masters include Cutman, Gutsman, Iceman, Fireman, Bobman, and Electman. With Dr. Light out of options and in desperate need of help, Rock, one of his personal assistant robots, elects himself to be transformed into a fighting weapon known as Mega Man or Rockman in Japan. Once Mega Man is created, Mega Man storms off into battle to fight the 6 Robot Masters and take down Dr. Wily once and for all. With this being a setup for our main character, it's not hard to see why people were able to get invested quickly with the Blue Bomber, is what I would say if we knew any of that information. With Mega Man 1, we have none of that information, as Mega Man 1 starts with just the title screen where you immediately hop into the gameplay. If I hadn't looked up the lore outside of the game, I would have never figured that out, as they never explain this information until the 4th game in the series, before the title screen in that game. But whatever, this game laid the foundation for the further games to later explore the lore and further mechanics. With the creation of the Blue Bomber here though, how did this play during his first outing? What made Mega Man so iconic that his 11th entry was just released in 2018, on top of his presence in the new Super Smash game possible? Well, let's dive into the gameplay of the very first Mega Man. Mega Man 1 did something incredible by having a very solid first game for the series to build off of. Even though this game does not have the incredibly awesome weapons, the slide mechanic, charge shot, power suits, or double gear system, this game is still extremely rewarding and fun to play. That comes from the fluidity of the movements with Mega Man and the great platforming from Capcom. With that being said, this game was not perfect, far from it in fact, but before we get into the bad or things I personally don't like, let's get into the things that I do like or are done great. Though Mega Man 2 would set the standard for the rest of the series to follow, Mega Man 1 managed to lay the foundation excellently in the gameplay. The vibrant stages with easily recognizable layouts helped make these stages all the more memorable. With the 6 bosses, it was always daunting to figure out what boss to choose and start your journey from. This is all because the game was not normal for the time. With a game like Super Mario Bros., Castlevania, and even to a certain extent Legend of Zelda, you were forced into traveling down a linear path for the levels. Though you absolutely could go to different dungeons in The Legend of Zelda to attempt them, they are basically designed to make it impossible for you to do so. With Mega Man, this isn't the case, as Mega Man makes it so that every stage is playable at first glance. Though some stages are definitely harder than others without special weapons or being out of sequence with the typical boss order, the game doesn't handicap you into playing one stage that then leads into the next. However, the fact that you had the choice to create your own pathway for the first half of the game, choosing all of the stages that came your way, was something not really done back in those days. Hell, it still isn't even done that often, or at least not like this. Mega Man was truly unique in this regard and gave players a very different experience because of it. The areas where Mega Man truly shines is in the jumping around, popping plasma blasts at your enemies as you stride across the screen. Mega Man's running animation is fantastic, always looking like he is running to the battlefields to save the entire world in one blast to Wily's face. Though that last part never happens, something that I truly can appreciate is the speed of the game. It never feels too slow or too fast either. It manages to strike the healthy balance of areas where you need to take your time and areas where you can just simply run and gun. That is the core of the Mega Man games as a whole, and I personally love to see it. However, something different is the addition of the score counter, not to mention these pellet things that give you more score at the end, and the old versions of the weapon and health energy drops. But they got revamped with the later sequels, as the Robot Master count did as well. Well, speaking of which, the Robot Masters in this game are equally as iconic, seeing as 2 of the ones in this game show up in later games as bosses to fight against Mega Man, with Guts Man showing up in Mega Man 7 and Elec Man being an avatar in Mega Man 10. With these absolute icons that we are working with, you would expect the fights to be legendary and hold up well over time. And that's where you are wrong, as the bosses in this game don't really have patterns, but at the same time aren't too difficult to defeat. Yeah. Their attacks are for the most part dodgeable, but as you see, many of the bosses die in just simply a few small hits for their fights. Talk about anticlimactic. But if you think that all the bosses are going to be like this, I present to you one of the most feared video game bosses of all time, seeing as to this day, I have not been able to ever beat this boss without the use of a glitch that plagues this game and the damage counter. This boss is the Yellow Devil. The Yellow Devil has the worst pattern to get down in the history of the entire franchise. It starts with him building block by block on one side of the screen, as you have to dodge those blocks coming at you. However, without the slide, it is incredibly hard to dodge these blocks with just simple jumping. It requires expert timing to simply avoid getting hit one time as he builds himself up. And if you think it's just his entrance, Jesus Lord have mercy, you'd be fucking wrong. The yellow devil stays up on screen intact for enough time for you to get one shot off in his eye, and that is if you don't miss, before he starts flowing block by block to the other side of the screen. The boss has only ever been defeated by myself through the use of a glitch. Right when you fire the elect beam to hit the eye of the devil, start spamming the shit out of the pause button. This will not only prevent your attack from flying off screen, but will reset the hit marker on the yellow devil, causing him to get hit over and over again, quickly draining his health. I will say it can be done without using this method, just I have never managed to do it, as this is just a skill gap issue for myself. But the following stages have you fighting off against Cutman, Electman, and a clone of Mega Man, but then have you fight a bubble sort of thing in Wily Stage 3, then you fight the other 4 Robot Masters and end with the Wily Capsule fight, where there is only one form of him. The game ends with our hero running through the seasons as he waits for the world to need him again after saving it from the clutches of the evil Dr. Wily. It ends on a bittersweet note as Mega Man waits for his calling again, but we know this is far from the last time we will see the Blue Bomber or the evil Dr. Wily. Mega Man 1 gameplay is, in a word, great. It's fun, memorable, with easy to remember bosses and weapons that are memorable, as well as a fire blast, ice shard, a burst of lightning, throwing scissors, throwing bombs, and throwing fucking blocks. Though some of these weapons aren't as useful as others, they are still memorable, and the order to which the bosses shine through by making at least some of them make sense in terms of what is the weaknesses for each of the bosses. The last thing I feel is worth mentioning is the magnet beam, which helps to provide a platform for Mega Man to stand on for some time. This, in many ways, is a slight precursor to the items in Mega Man 2, which are a predecessor to Rush the Dog that we would see in later entries. But speaking of what this game is lacking, let's talk about the bad with this game. As I have stated with the Yellow Devil, this game is hard, and I mean hard. Though not truly unfair, there are some elements in this game that I do not like that at times can make it unnecessarily hard. We already stated the Yellow Devil now 3 times, but the main enemies in the game can be a real pain in the ass as many of them shoot multiple projectiles in multiple directions. With knockback being something in every Mega Man game, it is important to note that in this game you are going to get hit a lot. This game is grueling at times, and with tricky platforming like the Disappearing Blocks and Iceman stage or the very phallic looking platforms in Gutsman stage, the game can make the most professional of gamers lose their fucking nuts. Like, seriously, part of the problem with the platforming is how fast Mega Man falls in this game. If he is falling off of the edge into a pool of blackness, you literally can blink and miss it. You'll blink and hear that damn sound effect signifying that,
congratulations, you played yourself.
I would say that Mega Man 4 and 9 truly challenged this game in terms of the difficulty. However, it seems that because of how bare bones this first game is, without the presence of E-Tanks like the rest of the series, this game makes it extremely difficult for you to make it to the next checkpoint without dying and getting a game over. Though, that is a plus with this game, and that is when you get a game over, it doesn't reset the whole game, but just brings you back to the beginning of the stage you left off at. With Mega Man 1, the game does something different by providing a score to the game with these small pellets you could pick up from killing an enemy. You get points from killing said enemies, however, the game gives you these pellets as a way of racking up your points at the end of the level. But seeing as this game is the only one with this feature and the score never equates to any sort of reward, I personally feel the inclusion of the score system is a waste of time and not worth the effort gathering points for the encounter. Like, imagine that every time one of those pellets dropped, it could have been a 1-up, health, or weapon energy. It's the small stuff like that that does aggravate me whenever I play this game, because without the ability to gain intakes, harder to dodge enemies, difficult platforming, and the score system taking up half of the drops, it makes the game that much harder to play because the health and weapon energy is so desperately needed. The final gripe I have with this game is unfortunately something I praise throughout the rest of the series, and that is the music. Though the music is not bad, it's just not as good, but I won't spend too much time talking about this point, as it was literally the first game in the series. I must state though, once and for all, I do like Mega Man 1 and really do enjoy the game greatly. Just there are many things holding it back from being one I return to as often, as it is so bare bones and more difficult than the rest of the series in my opinion. I normally come back to this game when I am playing the rest of the series and doing one big playthrough of them all. That is the least I can say because I'm currently playing Mega Man 8 and Jesus H. Christ, this game has got some fucking problems and almost like game-breaking problems, and it's not making me like it so much. But anyways, Mega Man 1 is still great with its gameplay, despite its flaws, but even with the flaws, the gameplay shines through, and that should have meant a success for the Capcom team. However, this is not what it seems. The reception of the first Mega Man game will go down in infamy for having one of the, if not the absolute worst video game cover arts of all time. Now, why is this and why does it look like that to begin with? This is because the original game was made in Japan, and after selling enough copies in the country, they were granted the ability to sell to the United States. This is where things get bad, as the CEO of Capcom hired an artist for the box art and told them they had only 6 fucking hours to make the art. Just fucking imagine that for just a second. 6 hours to make a complete box art with a description on the back of it showing off the game in 6 hours, like 6 hours for a game to be distributed to the entire country of the United States, one of the largest video game consumer markets, period. And yet 6 hours! I can't get over that. And the best part is this guy never played the game. With this man not knowing much on how to make the character look, he mistakenly gave him a gun with blue and yellow body armor around the character. Like, what the fuck? Not to mention the absolutely abysmal stance of the weirdly misshapen head and helmet. This game was so poorly represented by the awful box art that the game struggled to sell to a Western audience. Those who played the game loved it and said it was one of the best games for the Nintendo Entertainment System in 1987. However, they did all agree the box art for the game was so bad that the game was not very profitable. The game actually had such a hard time selling that when Mega Man 2 came around, the Capcom team was told to not focus on Mega Man 2 unless they were doing it on their own time. The team had so much confidence in the game in the series that the game would be made as a side project and turned into one of the most famous retro video games of all time. But without Mega Man 1, we wouldn't have gotten 2. Or the slide in 3, or the charge shot in 4, the controversy around Napalm Man in 5, and the Tournament of Fighters in 6, and so on and so forth. To sum it up, Mega Man 1 was a critically acclaimed game that just didn't sell as well overseas as the Capcom team was hoping for. But this first game was undeniably important for starting one of the longest running video game franchises in history. It laid the groundwork and set history. And that is why Mega Man 1 is so damn important.